So Solomon Kane just wrapped up the Kickstarter last week, and it's safe to say it was a disappointment. It made almost $1.2 million, so a successful campaign, but it was a little bit of a disappointment in that the standard now for a Kickstarter such as this would be $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, and it only made $1.2 million. It was losing backers every day for 2 weeks at the beginning of the campaign. It was a little bit of a disappointment. So what I thought I'd do is just in this video, a quick post-mortem and what lessons could you take away from the disappointment that this campaign ultimately proved to be. If you're going to do a Kickstarter, one of the worst things you can do, one of the cardinal sins of Kickstarter, is to take your core pledge for granted, right? The assumption that you don't need to win over the consumer for that basic core pledge, which in the case of these games is $100, $110, $120, $150, is just a horrible, horrible no. Because you're going out you're advertising for months in advance. You're going on Beast of War. You're like, look at this model. Check out this model. It's a co-op game. It takes 90 minutes. It's going to be like this. It's based off this. Blah, 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 blah. You're just hoping people will come to your Kickstarter page. You look it over, and then maybe they'll make a pledge. But you're asking for $110 in the case of Solomon Kane, and that's a lot of money. And maybe it's easy to get that confused because you do a few campaigns and people are like throwing $500 at you and go, oh yeah, I'll take two, all ins, why would I not? And it's just this concept like, well, everybody's got hundreds and hundreds of dollars to spend on my game if they want to, right? And it's just this assumption after maybe a few successful Kickstarter campaigns, they're like, well, you just show up and they just throw the money at you. But that's not how it works. It's you're not building a baseball park in the middle of a cornfield. People aren't just going to come and give you money. They're going to show up and you got to sell them. You got to sell them on that initial core package. Where you see some companies, they do their Kickstarter and it's just like, well, of course you're going to give me the core pledge. That money's already mine. Just legally speaking, it's mine. Just take it out of your wallet and hand it over to me, right? It's my money. Just stuff it down the front of my pants. It doesn't belong to you. It never belonged to you. It's mine. That's my $110. That's not yours. You don't get to keep that. That's my money. But it's not your money. You still have to make that sale. Every Kickstarter you do, it's not a continuation of the last one. If you seem on and you've done 20 successful Kickstarter campaigns, your next Kickstarter campaign is a fresh start despite all the reputation, despite blah, 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 blah. It's still a new relationship between the consumer and that product. They're not paying you for the last product. They're not paying you for the relationship. They're not paying you just because they're a fan. They're paying you for a new game. And that new game is something you have to sell. Mythic pretty clearly did not get this. They were not thinking this way. They committed the sin of taking their basic pledge for granted. They broke Kickstarter law. You don't do that. They have 39 minis for $110 on day one. You show up, you look at the set, it's 39 minis for $110. Nobody knows how the game works. The gameplay video they put up, it's like, they didn't even have it up right away. It's boring. It's slow. You don't understand how the rules work. There's no rule book to read. You can't see the cards. You can't see the tiles. It's all a bad first impression. And then it's 39 miniatures for $110. Well, 39 miniatures for $110. That's not going to work on retail levels, right? If that was available right now for you to go out and purchase, you don't go out and purchase that. That's a terrible value. That people who know what they're doing as miniature gamers, that they look at that and it's just like, no. You might catch it, like, oh, I really want this game. I really want this group of minis, whatever. But as just a rule, 39 minis for $110, that's not good enough. We're talking about PVC board game minis. They're high quality, but all the minis are high quality now. All these PVC minis coming out are high quality. They're still not a set from GW. Right? They're still not Hips Plastic. They're still not that. Fanboys try to talk themselves into it as if somehow like, oh, but these, they're oh, these are highly detailed PVC, and they got to glue them together in the China factory. They're still a penny a piece, probably less actually. And yeah, you can't get lost, and not everybody's a fanboy. You don't have enough fanboys to have hugely successful Kickstarters. CMON can't rely on fanboys. Monolith can't rely on fanboys. And Mythic can't rely on fanboys. You have to make that sale. And they were not prepared to make that sale. They didn't have explanations of the game. They weren't showing the game off in a way that made it look good. And then the worst thing they did of all was it had a terrible value. Now the interesting thing is, you look at the 2 Kickstarters ago, Mythic Battles Pantheon, it started off, it was $100 for 37 miniatures. I go, well, that's not that different, right? And this is maybe where Mythic is not greedy. Mythic is not, unfriendly to the customer. Mythic is just complacent. The people at Mythic just got complacent. And, well, ultimately complacency can take the place of a lot of other sins. If I look at Mythic Battles Pantheon, it had 37 minis for $100, but on the first day, they unlocked like 14 miniatures plus 10 plastic columns, so actually like 24 miniatures if you're going to include terrain. 24 miniatures on day 1. Now, 37 miniatures for $100, you go, well, that's not a good value, but oh look, they're going to unlock stretch goals. Of course, it's Kickstarter. Of course they're going to unlock lots of stretch goals, so that's not going to be a problem. Well, yeah, when you unlock 14 miniatures and 10 plastic columns on the first day. Meanwhile, the problem with Solomon Kane is they started off with the miniature, you get the tavern keeper, right? But then it's, now you get some plastic tokens. Oh, okay, that's a filler stretch goal. Okay, what do we get next? Oh, well, you get some plastic tokens. Oh, okay, I guess we're getting all the fake stretch goals out of the way early. What do I get next? Oh, well, you get some plastic tokens. Okay. All right. What do I get after that? Well, don't worry, because now you get some cards. You get 15 cards. All right. What? Oh, don't. Then this is now the campaign's really getting exciting. You get a dashboard. Yeah, it's a thick card dashboard. Wow. That's, you didn't think you were getting enough value, but now that you got a piece of cardboard, I think that's all turned around. They went $130,000 between miniatures. They went from Tavern Keeper to like the Solo Providence Mini, and $130,000 between those two. And that's the start of their campaign. This is when you have all the momentum. You have all the momentum at the beginning, and so how do they keep it up? Well, they give you tokens, and then some cards, and then a piece of cardboard. And then 24 hours into the campaign, everything stalls off, and they make about $1,000 over the second 24 hours, and people start leaving by the hundreds per day. That's how you do that. That's the effect of taking your core pledge for granted. People signed up for that early bird just because they wanted to save $10, I guess, and then they went, well, this is horrible. And because it was horrible, then what happens 3 days later? Well, Mythic has to throw a $20 expansion just into the core game for free. Just 1 second you didn't have it, next second you do. Here's just a $20 expansion, 7 figures, more cards, more tiles, whatever. It's a whole other adventure. And they just had to just drop it in there just to try and stop the bleeding, just to stop people from leaving and possibly prevent a far greater disaster. They hadn't started going negative in money. They probably were headed towards going a negative in money. They had to drop a free $20 expansion just in there just to stop the bleeding, which leads me to my next point. Now, I want to make a quick economic point here. It's a very simple one, but it's an important one. And it's about whether it's better for you financially to make your customers feel like they're getting a great value, or whether it's better to penny pinch and look greedy. Which do you think is better? To make your customers feel like they're getting a great value and probably therefore having to give them a great value? Or do you think it's better financially for you, the company, to penny pinch and not give as good a value, not leave your customers feeling like they get a good value? Which do you think makes more financial sense? Well, the answer may surprise you. So let's consider a little investment example. And we're going to talk about games. We're talking about miniature games here. And one thing on the internet I hear all the time is like, oh, well, like they can't provide a good value because all this stuff you have to understand. They have to pay for molds and they have to pay for production costs. They can't possibly do anything. You can't make a PVC mini for less than $3 a package. That's just it's not even feasible. You have to understand. Of course, most people I end up arguing with on the internet, including people who say this, are basically mathematically illiterate, which is probably why we end up arguing in the first place. So here's a quick example of why they're dumb. To you, the intelligent viewer I made this for, who will actually understand what I'm talking about. If I have to spend $30,000 to make another production mold for my plastic figure so I can have 10 to 12 more character sculpts, 10 to 12 more individual models. Let's say about $30,000, which is a realistic cost. Art and sculpting included, and then the production of the mold. And that one mold, that one $30,000 investment makes me $1 million more in funding, of which I'm going to draw off probably 30 to 45% in just profit, just goes to me. It's not my production cost, it's just to me. Now I have to cover my sunk costs for that, but it comes to me. Does that make sense? Is that better? Or even if I have to make 2 molds and I have to spend $60,000, does it make sense to spend $60,000 and raise an additional $1 million in funding when I'm going to be bringing in about 40% of that funding just as profit? Does that make sense? Which is better? And this is the problem that the mathematically illiterate miniature game fan just doesn't seem to follow. Yeah, things cost money, but you invest money to make money, or you spend money to make money, and you don't not spend money and then people throw money at you anyhow, even though fanboys typically think that's how it should work. Now, I see in the case, Simon, it's a great example, and Solomon Kane here, where as not that many figures on a figure to dollar count. It's not a good ratio. And I know a lot of people go, oh, well, I don't even count figures. I just buy the game for the quality of the game. None of those people have a receipt for like a $150 print and play game that they purchased, or, not a $150 army set, which was just nothing but 2D tokens with a picture of a guy on it. They don't have any of those. You know why? Because they're lying. and it shows an amazing lack of self-awareness that you'd say that out loud, knowing that it's not true. But they don't know it's not true, right? They're unaware. But here's the thing: nobody does that. You know why? Because they're cognizant of value. It's that they're not stupid. They're unaware, and they say things which make them sound stupid. But in actuality, they're not going to spend $150 on a war game, which is nothing but tokens for the models, because they're not completely stupid. And they do pay very close attention to how many models they're getting for the money they're spending. And even that idiot who's first to say, well, I would never count the models, is absolutely sure to count the models before he spends his money. Absolutely sure. Now, the ratio can be different, and a certain game can appeal to you even though you know you're not getting good value. But if we're appealing to the widest part of the bell curve, right, that fat middle of the bell curve, and I assure you people's perception of value of minis per dollar forms a bell curve. If you want to get to that fat middle of the bell curve, the more value you provide, the more likely you are to move through that fat middle. Pretty simple, right? So you see this with Simon's Ice and Fire, see with Solomon Kane. It costs, again, a penny to add another figure to the game. It costs a penny to add another figure to the game, and yet you don't have a high enough ratio of figures to dollars. And like I said, the fanboy, but there's a lot of sunk costs. You're right. You had to pay, $30,000, $50,000 to make the mold, to make that mini. And now it's already done. You can't get that money back by not giving people good value. This is where the mathematically illiterate part comes in. If I give people 10 of those figures, I still had to spend $30,000 to make the mold. If I give people one of those figures, I still had to spend $30,000 to make the mold. If I sell 100 times as many of my core pledge by giving them 10 of these figures, and again, they're a penny a piece. They even glue them together for a penny. Wow, China, amazing. you're really just at a level of staggering incompetence if you don't give the person 10 minis and sell it 100 times as many copies. But you'll have plenty of fanboys out there who, again, they're mathematically illiterate. They'll go, no, just make 1/100th of the copies. That makes more mathematical sense. I hope if you're listening to this, you know better. If you're listening to this, you know better. It makes way more sense to have a good ratio of minis to dollars and sell way more copies and therefore make more profit. And it makes sense to even invest more in additional sprues if it means you're going to be making more character minis, which will sell more copies of the game. If you have to spend $30,000 to make an additional sprue, but people look at the game and go, oh, wow, those are cool minis. I'm going to buy them to the tune of several $100,000, $1 million. Well, then you have to do that if you're making the right business decision. And so why do I bring all this up to begin with? Well, the point of this segment is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what Solomon Kane's makers, Mythic, had to do was they had to, 3 days into their stalled out, failing campaign, they had to just drop a $20 expansion right into things just to stop the bleeding, just for fear that they might have to cancel the campaign if the money starts going backwards and they had a $100,000 funding goal. That wasn't their funding goal. They probably spent more money than that in just sunk costs, just in prep costs. They absolutely wanted more money than that. So my alternative idea here is, what if instead of just in a flailing desperation move putting that expansion in, what if they had planned it from the beginning that way, that expansion would just be integrated into the first $400,000 worth of stretch goals? Like the same amount of stuff, they're still putting the core box, they're still putting this expansion into the core box. But now we're just going to stuff it into the first $400,000 stretch goals. We're not going to get rid of any of the stretch goals we already had. We're just going to add them in. Maybe shorten up the length of stretch goals, keep it at 20,000 the whole way through, whatever it is, double up some of these tokens, double up some of these cards and tiles. And now we're going to shove 7 more figures and more tiles and more cards and more adventure into the first $400,000 worth of stretch goals. So now we're going to go from 4 minis in the first $400,000 worth of stretch goals to 11 minis in the first $400 worth of stretch goals. Do you think that makes a difference? Do you think that's perceived a little bit differently than having to drop it into the core box in an act of absolute desperation and of an act of obvious desperation? If they had put this expansion into the stretch goals from the first place, what would have happened? Oh, people would have seen all these stretch goals dropping for their core pledge as the total raised up on the first and second day. They go, oh wow, I got like 11 figures here, like in the first 24 hours. I'm getting all kinds of value for it. Now suddenly it's not 39 figures for $110. It's, who knows? I got like 11 in the first 24 hours. And then the momentum doesn't dry up. The momentum doesn't die on these fake stretch goals. I'm getting a bunch of stuff thrown at me here. The saying is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's probably a better than 1-to-16 ratio. It probably would have been worth more than 16 times to put these in the stretch goals, but instead they didn't. Instead, they put out a campaign that lacked value, that had uncompelling fake stretch goals. They squandered their momentum, and once you do that, you don't get it back. An hour before this campaign started, somebody had gone, hey, you know what? It just occurred to me. The value of our campaign sucks and looks horrible. And our stretch goals are filled with like fake items, like plastic tokens and more cards. And they're going to make people go, oh, wow, this campaign sucks. So how about we just like not do that? How about we just take this expansion, we just shove it into the first $400,000 worth of stretch goals. And then everybody goes, wow, look at all these stretch goals we're unlocking. Wow, look at all these models I'm getting. Same outcome, except one, you get tons of credit. You don't kill your momentum. You probably don't die off with a campaign that only makes it to almost 1.2 million, while your last campaign made 2.1 and your sister companies just made 4.4. But the problem was, nobody did that. Nobody looked at the eyes of the consumer and did that. And that's the problem with this campaign overall. It was an incredibly poorly designed campaign, which brings us to our next topic. So if you're Mythic, way back 2 years ago, They're having a meeting. What's the next game we're gonna make? What project will we do after Joan Arc? And somebody goes, I know what we'll do. We'll do another expensive miniatures game. And then somebody else was like, yeah, let's do another expensive miniature game, but like we won't focus on the miniatures this time. Instead it'll be like a story game. I don't have cards. You get like thousands of cards, and it'll tell a story. And then another person was like, yeah, you'll tell a story, but then you'll have guys that aren't really minis, and you'll place them on the board, and you'll collect resources, and you'll solve puzzles. It's like a worker placement game, and you solve puzzles with the cards and dice. And here's the problem with the design of Solomon Kane. Here's the problem with selling Solomon Kane. When you tell miniature gamers you're selling them a miniature game, but it doesn't actually have that many miniatures in it for the price we're going to charge because it suffers from a bunch of card bloat and has a bunch of other shit that you don't really care about, they're not enthused about your game. And when you look at card gamers and you go, well, this game has thousands and thousands of cards, you're going to love the card game, except it's priced like a miniatures game. It has a bunch of miniatures you don't want to pay for, and it costs 2 or 3 times what you're used to paying for a game. Well, they're not impressed either. And then you look at Eurogamers and you say, hey, this has got like some kind of half-assed worker placement with our virtues, and you collect resources, you play cards, and you solve puzzles, but it's filled with a bunch of miniatures, and you hate miniatures because miniature games are for stupid people, and smart people know you only play games with cubes and meeples, which is just a fancy kind of cube, so they don't like it either. And by the way, it still also costs 2 or 3 times as much as you're used to paying for a game. Now you haven't impressed all 3 audiences. You haven't sold a game to 3 audiences, you've underwhelmed 3 audiences. And this is something game companies should keep in mind. You don't sell a little bit of your game to a bunch of different audiences. You sell your one game to one audience. And the fact is, Solomon Kane is a miniatures game. So you want to sell it to miniature gamers. Well, how about instead of 39 miniatures, you just more like 50, 60 miniatures to start with. And then stretch goal it up. And don't end the campaign on 80 miniatures. How about you end the campaign somewhere around 100 miniatures? Or you better yet, make it at $1 a dollar, 110 miniatures. Because you're selling the game to miniature gamers. You know what miniature gamers care about? Miniatures. And they want to get value for the money for miniatures. Even if they say they don't. That's not how they behave. Because only a moron would pay $150 for a game made with, little cardboard tiles. Unless it's, food chain magnet, in which case that's a perfectly rational decision to pay that much. But otherwise, only an idiot. But, if you had like the old GW rulebooks that had just like cut out figures, where you just cut out a 20 millimeter square and like that was an elf. Like imagine, okay, that's the game. We're not going to give you 150 figures. We're going to give you 150 paper squares, but it still costs $150. Well, they're not going to buy that because miniature gamers look at value. They're not completely clueless. What needed to happen, like somebody needs to get in a time machine and go back to the design meeting, and when somebody went, hey, I know, we'll make another expensive miniatures game, they needed to go, hey, let me just stop everybody right there. Our next game is going to be an expensive miniatures game. We just decided that. That's what we're going to make. And that's going to be our core concept. Making an expensive miniature game is what we're going to focus on first and foremost. Okay? We're going to focus on succeeding at making an expensive miniatures game. We're not going to focus on a bunch of other shit and end up with who knows what. We're going to focus on what our first decision was. We're not going to make 20 different games in one game. We're going to make one game. And that was the problem with Solomon Kane. It was just at cross purpose. Every decision seemed like it was at cross purposes with itself. Yeah, let's make an expensive, expensively priced miniatures game. Oh, but you know what? We're not going to focus on the miniatures. We're going to have it be about cards. You get thousands and thousands of cards. And it'll be an adventure game with cards. Oh, but and since we're going to, be blowing half our budget on cards, instead of using a few tricks to try to maximize the number of figures we can fit in the box anyway, let's make them like larger, like 35 millimeter, which is not actually that much larger. Just big enough to know that it's not the same scale as a 32. That's a difference. It's not really much more expensive or anything like that. Let's make them bigger and give them custom bases, and we're not going to do hardly any multiples. No multiples. We're just going to do lots of individual character sculpts. And since we're going to do a bunch of individual character sculpts, well, we got to stay true to the Robert E. Howard story. So, a lot of characters would be like village people, and one of the sculpts would be like a little kid, and then a sculpt would be like a guy missing his hand. And then we're going to have one sculpt is going to be an old man with a stick. And then Solomon Kane's going to have like evil following around. That's going to be represented by like floating blankets. At what point do you just stop and go, hey, maybe the next decision we make should be in line with the last decision we made, right? We're going to make a miniatures game. That's a great place, again, to stop. But suppose you keep going, okay, but it's an adventure game. It's going to have a lot of card bloat. Okay, well, let's try to make sure we stuff as many minis as we can for a lower, production price. Let's do what we can. And you start with multiples. Now, if it's more expensive to make them 35 than 32, probably not. Make them 32 so they're in scale with everything else. And lots of multiples. So when you make those pirates, don't put 2 in the box, put 4 in the box. So look at that. Now we got 4 soldiers, 4 pirates. And just look at how many more minis that is. So are we going to, do cool models? No, we're going to do like village people. Like, no, it's bad. And so, now to kind of summate. So what if we summated? Like, what have we learned? Well, let's go through it. Like, what are some things a company doing one of these Kickstarter games, what lessons should they know to not fuck up? Let's rapid fire. Let's go through recommendations for Kickstarter. Number 1, know your audience. Design your games to strongly appeal to an actually known audience, not some hypergroup that doesn't exist. If you're going to make a minis game, make a minis game and make it appeal to miniature gamers. Take it to miniature gamers that you know, but will not give you a bullshit opinion. And go, hey, is this a good value? And they'll go, no, it's a terrible value. Like, hey, we're doing larger, more detailed minis. Do you think it makes sense to do a bunch of village people and some floating blankets? They'll go, no, why don't you do cool models that don't suck, that are awesome, make me want to buy the game? Like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I lost track of what I was doing. That would make sense. That makes more sense. Know your audience. Number 2, put value in up front because making money is good. Well, canceling your Kickstarter project is bad. Yeah, you can pinch pennies and probably save dozens of dollars by doing that. But if your decisions are costing you millions of dollars of funding, and you're making $300,000 to $400,000 in profit for every $1 million of funding, that makes you a shitty person. That makes you a shitty business person. And it kind of makes you a stupid person in general. So don't skimp out. Put the value in up front. If you're going to make a game, on Kickstarter, quite frankly, it's better to have it be a little overloaded on day 1 and then have the stretch goals kind of go slowly in the middle, because at least it'll still have its momentum. The momentum isn't just stuff happening, it's the good emotions people have attached to your game. If they find your Kickstarter page on day 1 and it doesn't have very good value, you go, well, I guess I'll see if it changes, and then the momentum stalls out, it's not changing, and it kind of sucks, and they have bad emotionality towards your game, then you're really fucked. Number 3, momentum is precious. Once you lose it, it's gone. Piggybacking off the last point, Kickstarters are about momentum. People say, Kickstarter, it's all just a pre-sale, it's all bullshit. You're not doing what Kickstarter was originally intended for. When John H. Kickstarter started Kickstarter, he's spinning in his grave seeing what you all use Kickstarter for. That's not how it's supposed to be. But you know what? They're wrong. Kickstarter campaigns are still campaigns. They still live and die on momentum. It's not just a pre-sale. It's not at all just a pre-sale. And when people, you advertise your page, you advertise your campaign, you show it off the minis, blah, 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 blah. People come to the page on the first day, you have momentum. People have emotional excitement. Your campaign has juice. And you're not getting that a second time. You're not getting that a second time. You just get that the one time. People show up, they see it, they're enthused, they like it, they like what they see, they're excited to see what comes next, or they kind of go, well, this is shitty. And then you put out, fake stretch goal of plastic tokens, and another fake stretch goal of plastic tokens, and another fake stretch goal of plastic tokens. And then you alleviate the boredom with some cards, and your momentum is gone. And you don't get it back. And I think we saw that with this campaign. They dropped a free expansion on the campaign. It gave you 7 figures, and quite frankly, they were about 20 figures shy of having even remotely good value. So you can say that wasn't really drastic action, even though it was kind of drastic action. But the momentum was gone. It was gone, and it didn't come back. Compare that to, Monolith's Batman game. Monolith's Batman game made 4 point. Let's look at the kick track. Here's Batman Monolith game. This had momentum, and the momentum lasted the whole campaign. They released everything on day one in terms of add-ons. They didn't show all the stretch goals, but here are all the add-ons. Here's everything we're going to sell. I'm like, oh, well, that's boring. Well, guess what? The campaign still had momentum through the whole damn thing because people were excited about the game. Solomon Kane, it stalled off, and you didn't really you weren't getting enough stuff, and then kind of maybe they weren't going to give you very much stuff, or maybe the game sucked, and you weren't sure. Momentum's gone. That brings me to my next point, which is, again, all sales are emotional. And on Kickstarter, you're a salesman. I definitely see this as a major problem with some Kickstarter games that I've seen. Kickstarter gaming companies, the guys who run gaming companies, I'm not sure they understand this. And normally when you're producing games, you're not really a salesman. And so maybe this is hard for them to understand. You're not just putting it out there and, maybe people want to buy this. And you're not cut out for Kickstarter if that's your approach. If you're on Kickstarter, you're a salesman. Your job in Kickstarter is to make sales. And if you're a salesman, you know what your number one priority when designing your campaign is? It's to win over the customer emotionally. This is another thing many people who work in game companies probably don't understand. All sales are emotional. Ultimately, you're not arguing to somebody to buy your game. You can't argue. In the same way you don't argue with someone to fall in love with you or find you attractive. That's not how it works. It's an emotional draw. You don't argue it. They see it and they feel it or they don't. Anyways, so finally, again, building up the last point, number 5. Every decision you make should be one that creates a good feeling in the customer and avoids a bad feeling. And I like a great example, the early bird. Now, Mythic used an early bird here and it blew up in their face and was stupid. And hopefully they stopped using the cheap sales gimmicks to try to sell their campaign. Maybe just use their game. Because being cute didn't really work out for them that well. But let's just consider the early bird without Mythic's particular failure in it. You see the early bird, and this was a $10 discount. You see $10 discounts all the time with early birds, which just shows it's one of those things where you go, you don't know what you're doing. Early birds should be $5. That's the discount you should get for an early bird. And the reason early birds should be $5 is that if you give somebody a $5 discount on their $110, $120 game, they get a $5 discount, they go, oh, okay, that's good, I save $5. They feel good. The people show up after the first 24 hours, the first 1,000 copies, whatever it is, they show up and they go, oh, I missed the early bird. Oh, well, it was $5. Well, that's not so bad. I could, $5 is not real. That's not the end of the world. And both groups of people end up having a positive emotional reaction out of your early bird pledge. Because one, they got a discount, okay. And the other one, they missed it, but it's not the end of the world. Now, $10, oddly enough, you give somebody a $10 discount. Oh, okay, I say $10. They don't feel any better than if they save $5. Not really. And not, marginally. Probably not at all, but for some people, maybe a little marginal, unnoticeable, practically unnoticeable, but effect. Whereas with $10, for people who missed it, they go, $10. Right? It's just that little difference. $10 is enough that you notice. $5, that's not a big deal. $10, and of course it differs for people, but it's that many more people who go and, $10. Nah, $10. Wish I got the $10, you can buy something for $10. And you can tell, you see these things where when you see an early bird for $10, $15, $20 difference, it's obvious. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Why would you do that? You're not getting more sales. You're not really selling it any faster than you would with $5. And instead of doing a basic, just sales 101, just obvious best practice, where you give a $5 discount and it creates a positive emotion in both groups. You give a $10 discount, and you don't get any more positive emotions out of one group, and then you get a negative reaction out of the other. It just shows you don't know what you're doing, and because what you should be doing is working to create positive emotion in your customer at all times with every decision you make. And I'll use Mythic Battles Pantheon, the Kickstarter from Mythic two ago when they partnered up with Monolith. One thing they did was that one thing to trying to juice the sales is that all their expansions. This was back when Mythic Battles Pantheon was supposed to go to retail. It never did. It never will. But one thing they did to juice their expansion sales was they had exclusives on every expansion. The expansion costs $50, but then you get an exclusive model or exclusive little group of models, and you couldn't get that once it went to retail. This is your only chance to ever get it. Well, you had to spend $600 to get everything in Mythic Battle's Pantheon. Most people don't have $600 in their gaming budget at any one time. They're not holding out on you, they just don't have it. And what that creates then is a feeling of, I don't want to miss this, but I literally don't have the money to buy it. And so you feel bad, and you feel annoyed, and you create a negative association to the product. And no, that again is not knowing what you're going to do. You think, oh, well, but, it's FOMO, and then they'll buy it. Oh, they'll buy it because I make them worry about it. Yeah, that does create an emotion. Does create an emotional appeal. But here's the problem. You don't sell a product because people are afraid of missing it. You sell a product because people want it. How it actually works in real life is you give people really good value on the core pledge. They go, wow, I love this game, and stretch goals are coming out. It got me really excited. I'm just going to buy more. I'm going to buy another. I'm going to buy more. I'm going to buy it all. Right? You don't go, this game kind of sucks. I don't like it. And plus, if I don't buy it all now, I don't get everything. That's not how it works. You don't sell more that way. The difference in sales between this exclusive on the expansions, not enough to make it worth doing in the first place, and then it creates negative emotionality in your audience, which puts it into the negative. It's actually a negative result you're getting by doing stuff like that. And that brings me back finally to putting that value in the core pledge. If you put a ton of value in the core pledge, way more than people are expecting, way more than they think is fair value for their money, like they're getting more than they feel like they owe you more, they'll turn around and immediately reward that. They'll think things like, oh, I'm getting so much for my $100, I kind of feel guilty, I'll just go ahead and buy 2, 3, 4 more expansions of this game. I really like this game. Because here's the thing, they haven't even played it yet. They don't know if the rules are good, but you're giving them so much value, they got like, wow, this company is being really great to me. This game is creating all these positive feelings in me because they're doing this. So I like the game. I have a positive emotional experience. I like positive emotional experiences. I associate with your game. I like your game. And now I want to own more of your game. Now I'm going to spend more. Not because I'm afraid of missing out. Not because of some stupid gimmick you think is going to juice your sales when it does absolutely nothing at all. I have a positive association to you and your company and the deal you're providing me. I mean, and it seems like people who don't understand what they're doing in sales, they get it exactly backwards. You sell somebody, again, the Mythic Battle Pantheon, you get an incredible value for $100 or $90 if you got an early bird, and you go, wow, I'm getting all this value. I'm getting tons of stuff for $100, like way, way more than I could hope to get in retail, more than double than I could hope to get in retail. Do people then stop and go, well, I got so much, I guess I'll just stop. I don't have to buy anything else. No, they do just the opposite of that. They go, well, I'm getting so much value for my $100, it doesn't really hurt to go ahead and buy another couple more expansions, even though expansions have really poor value, especially relative to these Kickstarter core pledges. And I think Battle's Pantheon, it wasn't great value even for the retail market. But they go, well, even if I spend another $150 on expansions, it evens out with I'm getting so much value in the core pledge, it still evens out. I'm still getting a great value if I spend $250 on it all. That's how sales really work. It's not it's not like Solomon Kane, where we go, oh, well, I'm barely getting anything in the core pledge for my $110, so I guess I'll just have to go buy more expansions to round it out. Yeah, that's not what happens. They go, I don't like the amount of value I'm getting in this game. I really don't like this game. I really don't trust this game. So I'm not going to buy anything else. And you can see that for a fact. This game coming in with $50 less on average per backer than John Bard made. Around like $70 less per backer than what Batman made. That's what negative emotionality does. That's what a low value does. They don't go, oh, well, you're not giving me very much stuff, so I guess I'll have to spend more. Although I've literally heard that argument made many times online by fanboys. They go, whoa, they got to make their money. They got to make their money. Yeah, they're gonna make their money by making no sales. But unfortunately, I get a feeling probably a lot of people work in game companies don't know any better than the fanboys online just spouting off, because they do the same stupid things. And they get $1.2 million in their campaign when their sister company just made 4.4 by not doing all the mistakes that they made. All right, well, I hope Mythic does a better job next time. This was not a disaster of a campaign, but it was really illustrative of what you don't do. And it's how And I hope Kickstarter companies in general understand that you're not going to pinch pennies. You're not going to penny pinch your way to success. I hope Kickstarter companies in general understand that you're not going to penny pinch your way to success, right? And we saw this with CMON and Ice and Fire. That campaign stalled out. Didn't make nearly as much money as it should have. Probably didn't make them enough profit to even cover their sunk costs in developing that game and all the expansions they're going to bring to retail. And it's probably going to be DOA when it gets to retail, which, again, is more ironic, but CMON's now a public traded company. They think, oh, what? We got to squeeze more dollars out. We'll squeeze more dollars out. We'll make fewer sales and we'll make more money that way. Well, how'd that work out? Now your game's going to ride DOA into market, I guarantee you. I guarantee you. That game's going nowhere. It's going to be on deep discount. I would wait to buy anything from that. And hopefully Mythic doesn't go down that path. Hopefully they learned their lesson now. See the campaign from the customer's point of view. Maybe get some outside opinions and make sure you have a good value. Because if you're not concerned about the customer's not going to turn around and reward you. Okay? It's not going to happen. All right? With that, it's all been fun and games, and I'll see you later.